Hello everyone, this is Bobbin Threadbare, and welcome back to The Crew 2.
Oh, hello there. I'm still Joe.
And we are on our way to the next freestyle event.
Oh dear.
Jet sprint boats.
Is this a normal occurrence? Just skipping on the ground there?
Yeah, that is the point of jet sprint boats in general, apparently, is the fact that they are able to go through very shallow water. This is apparently the wrong side of this barrier thing. Guess I'll have to go around. But yeah, basically a jet sprint boat is a flotation device with a giant engine, that's not the way, strapped into it, and a very shallow draft.
Wow. That sounds like a ton of fun.
Like, it doesn't even have a propeller.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that's why it's called a jet sprint.
Huh.
It's because it is forcing water back to force the boat forward.
Oh, it's one of those. You sawed it in half.
Yeah. Apparently it's from some sort of meme, but I'm not familiar with it. I just know that when I look at this boat, I think that someone has sawed it in half.
Yeah, I could definitely see it.
Better pick it up if you want to beat the clock.
Alright, once again, this is a time attack event. And so that guy who just blasted off into the distance is the world record. So I don't really have to worry about that.
What about those split times? Same deal?
And I should add that this is on normal difficulty. This is another event I haven't really spent much time with, so my boat is close to, but not quite at the level that I need to be at for the hard difficulty.
Oh. Alright, I forgot about that.
Now, something interesting about the jet sprint events is that you always slow down when you're on land. Obviously, you can't push water back when there's no water. But there is you do have to figure out, like, because you can cut corners by jumping across the land. So when is that worth the slowdown and when isn't it? So it's sort of like the rally races in that way.
Oh yeah. Still looks like a ton of fun.
Yep. I believe this is the Everglades we're sprinting through right now.
Okay.
So we saw this before, but we saw it from land. Haven't really gotten right into the swampy areas like we are now.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the Everglades included a swamp at all.
The Everglades is a swamp.
Oh.
It is a massive patch of wetlands.
Huh. I'll be honest, I thought it was like a mountain range.
A mountain range.
Yeah.
At the tip of Florida.
I don't know, the name the Everglades didn't really associate anything to Florida in my mind.
Oh, yeah, Florida, the entire peninsula is kind of at risk of sinking under the ocean with rising sea levels, and the Everglades is going to be saline one day because of that.
Wow.
But now let's go on to a drier part of the country. Las Vegas. So you know how one of the casino attractions is Venice?
I was not aware of that.
They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But we've got a race coming up there, and everyone's gonna know about it. And where we're going, we won't need roads, my friend. Just canals, pools...
And a couple of kitchen sinks along the way.
Why not? This is a big deal. It's the first time anyone's raced here. A boat race in the middle of the desert. It's a crazy idea, but that's exactly why it works.
Next thing you know, they'll be racing planes on the strip.
Nah, that would never happen.
Racing planes on the strip is one of the air race events.
I thought that was, like... I thought there might have been an air race on the strip, like, back in the 50s?
Near it, perhaps, but not, like, between the buildings.
Wow.
All kinds of safety violations there. But yes, this is the Canals of Venice, specifically the Venice attraction in Las Vegas.
By the way, want to tell me why we're having a boat race in the desert?
You can definitely tell that this is not Venice from the fact that the water is clean.
Yeah. And none of the buildings are actually sinking into the water.
I hear that going to Venice at certain times a year can be quite pungent.
Yeah. And that's got nothing to do with rising sea levels either. They built Venice on a swamp.
Huh.
And they pounded a bunch of thick wooden posts into the water, built their buildings on them, and over time those posts have been sinking. So, funny thing about that little uphill bit of water is it's a bad idea to use the nitro on that because it doesn't really improve your speed any. So, the best way to use nitro in the jet sprint event is immediately after you finish doing something that slows you down, like turning or going uphill. The way that water rarely does in real life. At least not without also involving a lot of, you know, whitewater rapids. Also, I am not moving the boat here.
That was a nice race you ran. Too bad the world will never know about it.
Is that just
because, as
currents, or is it just idling forward?
It's a current. Now I'm going back, see?
Interesting. It's kind of cool that they modeled that.
Yeah. And it does have an effect on races, because it slightly slows you down or speeds you up.
Ooh.
Let's see here. Ah, yes. This is the other unique event. Another extremely dangerous place to go jet sprinting, in fact.
Gee. Hey.
This is gonna be one heck of a race. A tricky one, too.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Narrow passages, going under piers,
Jumps, big waves.
watching the boats racing through an actual working port. It's never been done before. The drivers will have a blast and everyone will go crazy.
You'll be saying that right up to the moment someone gets creamed by a tanker.
It won't happen. We've got right of way.
Try telling that to the law of physics.
Yeah, just the one.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Yeah, the law of physics.
Yup.
But yeah, this is the Los Angeles port.
Oh. Oh dear.
And these are the kinds of passageways you need to get through.
Yeah. It's a good thing the tides are where they are, right?
Yeah. It's a good thing the game doesn't model tides. And in any case, I believe this event has a set time schedule anyway.
Of course.
Yeah. Speaking of tankers,
Careful there.
Oh, yep. That's a couple of beasts right there.
I believe those are cargo carriers, though. Like, I've seen pictures of modern tankers, and they look weird. They just sort of bow out towards the bottom. Whoops. Because they want all of that fluid to have a low center of gravity.
This is where it gets fun.
Kind of looked like those might have been like I don't know exactly what it's called, but they were like towed in for maintenance.
I don't know. I think we're in the yacht section now.
Ooh.
By the way, you might have also noticed, but another thing about jet sprinting is that it is a...
I can't look. Okay, I got it.
It's an event with laps.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to rally races, which are point-to-point.
Yeah, it's still only showing you percentages.
Yeah. Well, the easy way to tell how many laps you have is basically when you reach the place where you started, what's that progression say? Normally it's going to be about 50% for 2 laps, oh crap. I hit that boy right front and center.
Well, everything was coming at you. All of it.
But yeah, the jet sprinting is usually a 2-lap event.
This is absolutely terrifying in every respect.
Yeah, that's why they don't do this in real life.
I guess so.
Like, normally jet sprinting, I imagine it's gonna be dangerous because they do it in wetlands and places where there's a lot of shallow water and thus, you know, trees and obstacles, but, you know, racing through an active port is something different.
You see? I told you it was worth the risk. You never feel more alive than when you're on the edge.
Also, Sophia is crazy. I've told you this before.
Yeah, she definitely feels like someone who would only exist in movies and video games.
Well, people like her exist in real life. They just, either they know their limits or they don't exist for very long.
Of course.
Now...
That's a lot of sharks.
Yeah. What's the symbol of the race type? They've all got, like, mascots like that.
Oh.
But this time I've decided to go down to Colorado. Or more precisely, around Arizona or so. It's the Colorado River.
Wait a minute, I recognize that wooden mammoth.
3.
Oh yeah, that's also a mascot. They've got a bunch of those.
Oh, for freestyle, right?
Yeah. Freestyle's got a bunch of their wooden mammoths littering the map.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
It's kind of surprising they haven't burned them all.
Comes later.
And,
This checkpoint's water under the bridge. Let's see what you do with the next one.
oh, Emmett and your dad jokes.
Oh.
But something else I should point out is that I haven't been showing any of the other jet sprint boats, but that's because they all look pretty much the same. They drive a little differently from each other, but they're also all proto-brand, so they don't represent any actual manufacturers. So honestly, there's no real point in seeing the others.
I wonder if it's because, like, normal jet sprint boats are just custom jobs, or if it's like just each manufacturer like pits out their one thing.
Well, there's not much branding in the Formula One event cars either. Like, there's Red Bull, and that's about it. Ah, crap.
Oh.
But hey, you got to see the exit port where the water comes out there for a second.
Oh. Yeah, it just kept on going. Kind of gyrating.
Well, that was me on the wheel. Trying to move it around. But yeah, even with all of those screw-ups, I still managed to win the event.
Hmm.
Alright, let's strap on some new parts. Let's see what other trouble we can get into here.
Hmm.
Actually,
Wonder what comes next.
next, it's time to show you another feature of the game.
Okay.
It's time to show you how to customize a vehicle.
Ooh.
And to do that, first of all, I'm showing you the catalog and how it's based on the manufacturer, and you can't really sort it by any other means. Like, you can go to the headquarters and check an event by the cars in that event.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the catalog here, the catalog is only by manufacturer. Oh hey, there's a Peugeot. And a Renault.
Ooh, that's a Megane.
Hey, why not?
Why not?
The most customizing you can do is with the street racing cars.
Guess that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're going to buy a street racing car. The Renault.
These are... Over here in Iceland, these are among the most boring cars you can get. Like, they're everyman vehicles.
Yeah, this Megane really isn't popping out of me either.
Hmm?
But it is a little interesting, at least as speaking as an American, because the French manufacturers don't really have a big presence in the United States. Like, they used to.
Yeah.
They used to send vehicles over here, but not these days. Anyway, what I'm doing right now is I am moving a vehicle into my garage area so that I can take a look at it.
Ooh.
And any ground vehicle qualifies for the garage area here. Now, obviously I can go with the official paint colors, but I can also choose from a variety of colors and hues.
Oh.
And paint types. Matte is especially striking, as is iridescent. And there's something interesting about iridescent, in that you can change one of the two colors by hitting X. Fine-tune.
Ooh. It's definitely new for iridescent paint jobs, as far as I'm concerned. Like, used to be it was just like you flip the switch and it does something, and you pick one of the colors and it just tries to find something gaudy enough to become iridescent.
Well, anyway, moving on, we've got visual parts that honestly should affect the performance because you're changing stuff like the weight and the aerodynamics, but this game is arcadey enough that it doesn't really care.
I was gonna say, for the hood, that might not make a difference, because, like, You could definitely get wraps that just look like carbon fiber like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about the wide body?
I mean, ground effects is ground effects. They do help.
But they're all visual parts, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have noticed we have something like 80 different rims, and those do not count the rims that come with your car, and you can choose from several of those. Why not? Gold wheels.
And nearly no rubber.
Yeah.
God damn, that is not going to be comfy.
Gotta be precise at them high speeds. And either a side skirt or no side skirt. Rear fender, more wide body.
Oh, dear.
Rear wing.
I mean, I should have already been alarmed when you went for the yellow, but...
This is an example car, not a keeper. Just putting that out there.
I do like that there's the option to black out your tail lights so that they don't work.
They still work, they're tinted now.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. It's just a very popular mod, and I don't know why.
Well, gotta go with lemon yellow for the interior to match the paint. But more yellow or less yellow? What do you think?
I'm thinking a combination blue and yellow. Go for the full Ali G treatment.
Unfortunately, only one insert. Sometimes they let you change the material of the center console there. Alright, now let's trick it out with the parts that do matter. Take this bad boy out for a race.
It's hideous. I love it.
Alright.
This...
Next time we'll take a look at how to apply a livery.
Ooh.
That's this whole big thing, and... You know, it's gonna take another video to go over that.
Can't wait.
But until then, I believe there are more street races I haven't gone on yet. So let's head up to the Black Hills. The Black Hills are in South Dakota.
Okay.
Fun fact. Americans drove the Native Americans who considered the Black Hills sacred out of the Black Hills because they thought there was gold up there. Turns out there wasn't.
Oh, well, look at this.
So, once again, my car is overqualified for this starting difficulty race. So even though there's a lot of snow on the ground, I am blasting off ahead. I will say this, it's at least nicer to control than the Honda Civic was.
Right, that thing understeered like crazy. I don't wonder what was up with that, especially... That was in snow too.
The Civic wasn't in snow. It was the motorcycle that was.
Yeah, now I remember. Yeah, like snowy back roads.
Oh, hey, there's Mount Rushmore.
Oh,
we just passed it on the right.
Oh, that... I missed it. I mean, it's about the second time we've seen it, right?
Yeah, we also saw it during the one aerobatics event. There's a neat little touch, though.
Ooh.
Oh, hey there, buddy. I must have slowed down because I'm in first-person mode.
Oh.
And I can't see Jack. But, yeah, the center console display is mirrored.
Huh. Wonder why.
Well, because there's glass on it. The rear view mirror is also a mirror effect. It's just really bad and kind of grainy and blacked out. So it doesn't have to be a good effect.
Huh.
But it exists, and it does change with the environment. Also, I think the mirror thinks that the ground is not covered in snow right now. Because I can see the center line in the rearview mirror and not in the front.
Oh. This is kind of reminding me of the like glass mirroring happening in I think it was the first Watch Dogs, where like you would see a mirror image of the sun, and behind the window there'd be the sun. It was all sorts of weirdness like that.
By the way, what do you think of the windshield wiper action here?
Oh yeah, that's like standard now. You gotta have windshield wipers in all your racing games.
Well, assuming there's one on the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that this model of the car does seem pretty nice, at least.
It's the RS model. It's the one they put out for touring cars.
Or it's based on that one, at least.
Oh yeah. Homologation is not. Yeah.
Looks like we're just outside of Chicago, though. Did you see the sign?
Ooh.
Yeah, the green signs will tell you accurately where you are. What else do we have here? San Bernardino Mountains, Coastal Range 2 oil fields. Well, looks like that's it for now. Let's take the Coastal Range. I believe that's in the California area. And because the movie this video is going to be paired with is The Italian Job.
Ooh. The original?
The 2003 version. Apparently that's the version my patron was familiar with.
Okay. I've only seen the original. It came on TV once and I loved it.
Well, anyway.
Though it does suffer from being from the 60s and thus, like, you know, there is aging. It's just got a very good action set piece at the end.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But once again, there was only one song I could possibly put over this.
I love it.
And even though it's vocal, it just had to be done.
Well, it's just a chorus and not much else. God. I have a special place in my heart for the Mini, mostly just because it's a joy to drive.
And it's just this crazy little vehicle created by this crazy little English company.
Yeah, British Leyland was... They were weird, and I don't know in what way, but there are tons of people who know more about British Leyland than I do, but they did some very weird things.
By the way, I've noticed that this Mini has the sort of centered instrument cluster. Like, that's the kilometers per hour gauge right there in the center. You can see it through the back window. And I have no idea why companies have been doing that recently. Like, the Prius also has a centered instrument gauge.
Yeah, and they've done... there were a couple different Toyotas where, like, they had some manner of a mirror mechanism or something like that that made it so that you weren't moving your focal distance all that much to be able to focus on it.
Huh.
I think it might be like a behavioral thing, getting you to focus on what's the center line of the car as opposed to, like, what is the line going through your nose.
Not sure how much that would help, though. But then I don't make cars. Anyway, though, it does just seem annoying to me, though. Just the reason that the dashboard has always been towards the left is because that's where you're sitting. Or the right, you know. Hell, maybe that's it.
Driver's side.
Having to move less stuff between the two different left-hand or right-hand drive versions of the car. Like, maybe that's why Japan and English manufacturers are the ones embracing this first.
Well, the Mini more...
Just for the viewers at home, Japan and England are the two biggest right-hand drive countries in terms of manufacturing.
yeah.
I mean, maybe India, but their car industry really isn't that big. But yeah, sure enough, here we are at the oil fields.
Oh, man.
Oh, actually, for once today was actually worse than it was in the event.
Oh. I think it's pretty nice, though. All things considered.
Looks nice, but the weather's worse. But yeah, you can see the rainbow there.
Yeah.
Yep. We're up in the oil fields by San Francisco. So, like I said before, today's movie is The Italian Job, specifically the Hollywood remake made in 2003. That was the version chosen by patron IOTJ Esquire, so let's get a bloomin' move on and cover it. The story about the story. The original The Italian Job is a landmark of British cinema released in 1969. It was a comedy caper film starring Michael Caine, and it was part of a new wave of crime films in which the criminals don't have to lose everything and go to jail by the end of the movie. That said, The Italian Job does end on a literal cliffhanger. The idea to remake The Italian Job first came from Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, a pair of British screenwriters who have written every James Bond movie since 1999's The World Is Not Enough. However, the studio Paramount rejected their script and handed writing duties to Donna and Wayne Powers, who watched the movie exactly once and developed a script that was inspired by the original more than anything else. Both are about a group of criminals stealing gold bullion from other criminals. Both involve going to Italy and then getting out of the country. Both have characters who share the same names. And both have a car chase involving 3 Mini Coopers in a traffic jam, but that's about where the similarities end. To direct the movie, Paramount brought in Gary Gray. Gray got his start directing gangsta rap music videos in the early 1990s, and moved up to action movies starting in 1995. Before The Italian Job, he had directed Set It Off and The Negotiator, Afterwards, he would direct 2015's Straight Outta Compton and The Fate of the Furious, the 8th movie of the Fast and Furious franchise. The film's lead protagonist, Charlie Croker, is played by Mark Wahlberg. Wahlberg originally came to fame as a singer and rapper under the stage name Marky Mark, and he moved on to acting starting in the late 90s with movies like Boogie Nights and The Perfect Storm. Wahlberg was Gray's first choice for the role, as was Charlize Theron as Stella Bridger, the female lead. Theron is a South African who started her career as a European model, but would break into the film industry as a serious actor in the late 90s. Her first early success was 1997's The Devil's Advocate, and she would win an Academy Award for Best Actress for 2003's Monster. Other members of the cast include Seth Green as the team hacker, Mos Def as the team's demolition expert, Jason Statham as the driver, of course, Edward Norton as the inside man, and Donald Sutherland as an old-fashioned safecracker. Gray wanted the Italian job to be as realistic as possible, so not only are most of the effects practical, the actors perform most of their own stunts. They also spent most of their time on location, and while one of those locations was Los Angeles, others included Venice and the Italian Alps. Ultimately, the film managed to make $176.1 million on a $60 million budget, making it a financial success and the highest-grossing film Paramount released that year. And while it's not as iconic as the original, The Italian Job got decent reviews from critics, a few awards and nominations, and a 22% bump in mini sales. Incidentally, Mini was at one point a subdivision of British Leyland, as Joe mentioned during the mini race, but Leyland collapsed and got nationalized in the 1970s. A lot more happened after that, but by 2003 the Mini brand was owned by the German automaker BMW. But I'm getting off topic. I should save the car stuff for after. The story. The movie begins with Stella Bridger getting a call from her father John, who has gone to Venice to pull off one last job despite being on parole. John's partner in this crime is Charlie Croker, who has recently taken up the leadership position. Their crew for the job includes Handsome Rob the driver, Left Ear the demolition guy, and Lyle the hacker. Then there's Steve the inside man, who's breaking into an old mansion and preparing some chemicals. The crew start measuring walls and painting ceilings. This is all to blow the floor out from under a safe and drop it into their boat. Except of course a falling safe would destroy their boat, and so the chase scene that follows is a decoy. The safe is actually underwater, where John the safecracker is getting it open to get $35 million worth of gold bullion. One getaway later, the crew of 6 is celebrating at the Austrian border in the Alps. They start talking about what they plan on doing with their shares of the money, with Handsome Rob wanting a leather suit and an Aston Martin Vanquish, a grand touring luxury car with a V12 engine. Lyle wants a sound system so loud it'll blow women's clothes off. Left Ear wants a house in the south of Spain with rooms for first edition books and his shoe collection. And Steve hasn't decided yet. Meanwhile, John tells Charlie that he regrets spending half his daughter's life in prison and tells him to do better. The team is crossing a narrow road over a dam when 2 SUVs block the road on both sides. Steve pulls a gun on Rob to make sure he sits quietly as his friends take the gold out of the back of their van. Steve then gets out and shoots John and probably plans on shooting the rest, but before he can, Rob guns the engine and winds up toppling into the frozen reservoir. Luckily the team survives since they still have their scuba gear, and I guess hypothermia doesn't exist, but John doesn't make it. According to a helpful title card, 1 year passes and we're now in Philadelphia. Stella is carrying on the family business of cracking safes, although she uses high-tech equipment to defeat equally high-tech safes. Also, she works with the law instead of against it. On the other hand, she does break a lot of traffic laws in her red 1990-something Mini Cooper. After getting back from a job, Stella finds Charlie waiting at her workplace. They aren't on good terms, for obvious reasons, but Charlie has come by to tell her that Steve has resurfaced in Los Angeles, selling the bricks he stole in Austria. He's bought a Worthington 1000 safe, and so Charlie needs Stella to crack it. Not for the money, of course, but for the revenge. She refuses at first, but she really wants that revenge. The team assembles under a half-built overpass, and at this point we get proper introductions. Lyle claims that he was the true creator of Napster, and his roommate Sean Fanning stole it from him. And incidentally, that's the real Sean Fanning stealing that floppy disk in the flashback. Of course, Lyle shouldn't be too mad at him. The original Napster went bankrupt in 2002. Left Ear got his nickname after an exploding toilet in high school made him go deaf in his right ear. Handsome Rob once ran from the police in Los Angeles just to set a record for the longest freeway chase, and while he was in jail, he got over 100 letters from fangirls. As for Charlie, he's been stealing wallets from bullies since elementary school. Charlie's crew head to Los Angeles and start planning the new heist. However, they soon run into a few problems. First off, LA traffic. They need to get from Steve's house to Union Station fast, but there's bumper-to-bumper gridlock in the way. Second, a high-tech Carson security system that no one's ever cracked before. Third, Left Ear has some demolition ideas, but he needs some expensive gear to do it. Also, guard dogs. First off, Charlie wants a video blueprint of Steve's interior. Stella is the only team member Steve doesn't know, so they have to send her in to get the footage they need. Handsome Rob seduces a cable service worker to get her work shirt and steal her van, and to give Stella an excuse, they unplug Steve's cable connection at a nearby switch box. Stella manages to find the safe and record its location with her lapel pin camera, and when Steve asks her out, she says yes, since it'll get him out of the house for the robbery. The safe is too far from the door to carry out, but the hallways are 6 feet wide, since Steve's home is a renovated Spanish Mission. Turns out that's just wide enough for a microcar like the Mini Cooper, and so the gang buy 3 new Minis, hire a guy called Wrench to tune them up, and practice driving them through an obstacle course in an empty warehouse. Fun fact, Handsome Rob may be the wheelman, but apparently Charlie's Theron was the best stunt driver among the actors. Lyle, who insists on going by the Napster now, hacks into the LA traffic control system so he can give the crew all green lights on the way to Union Station. Meanwhile, Steve shoots his middleman for recognizing his gold bars, and this causes the Ukrainian mobsters who were buying the bars to start tracking down their source. The night of the raid comes, but the crew have to abort because Steve's neighbor is hosting a party full of potential witnesses. So Stella has to go on her date with Steve and string him along so that they can set up a second date. But she gives herself away by using one of her father's favorite sayings. When Steve realizes who Stella is, the rest of the gang come out of hiding to support her. Steve and Charlie taunt each other for a while, and while Steve says that he's already spent most of the gold, Charlie doesn't care. He's mostly doing this for the revenge anyway. Afterwards, Napster overhears Steve ordering a helicopter, an armored car, and a cargo plane headed for Mexico City. But Charlie considers this good news. Since they have control of LA's traffic grid, they can steal the gold in transit. However, Charlie's local contact warns him that the Ukrainians think he killed their leader's cousin, the middleman. So the gang puts together a new plan, sets some explosives underground, brings on Wrench as a full member, and there's something off about that Hollywood sign. Not sure if that's a legitimate screw-up or some sort of Easter egg. The transport begins, and Steve brings in 3 armored trucks with a motorcycle escort to use as a sort of shell game. However, Napster uses his 3D measuring software to figure out that truck 128 is riding 4 inches lower than the other 2. So he takes over the traffic system to lock out the main controls and force the target truck to take a specific route. Then Charlie, Handsome Rob, and Stella drive their minis into the subway. For this part, the minis are using electric power. Exhaust fumes and enclosed spaces aren't exactly a good combination. The minis go to a subway junction, and Left Ear blows his charges perfectly to drop the armored car into the subway, with Wrench dropping a truck panel over the hole to keep anyone else from going in. They disable the driver with tear gas, not to mention the sudden drop, but they hit another bump when the safe turns out to be a different model. Stella's up for it, but she needs extra time. But when she cracks it, it turns out there are $27 million worth of gold bricks left. The crew leave the subway by taking a storm drain to the LA River. They take care of the motorcycle guys at this point, but Steve keeps following them in his helicopter. So Charlie splits off to bait Steve into following him, and Steve ends up breaking the helicopter's tail rotor when he tries to shred Charlie's car. So then Steve hijacks an old Ford pickup truck, looks like a 92 to 97 model, to continue the chase. Still, all three minis get to their destination, a train car at the railroad station. Wrench is there to cover for them, and when Steve sees him there, he tries to bribe him like he's some unknowing employee. But Charlie is waiting for them, and more importantly, so are the Ukrainians. Turns out Charlie cleared things up with them, and gave them a cut of the gold to let them get away. And also they gave them the man who killed their leader's cousin. Stella punches Steve for her dad, and then the crew leave on the train. The movie ends with an epilogue, as each of the crew members live out their dreams. The cars. So the star of the show was definitely the car chase at the end, but hey, there was a boat chase at the beginning. More importantly, there was a lot of boat racing going on in the crew too, so that's what we'll be talking about today. Why do people race boats? How do they race? And what kind of races are there? Humans have been building and sailing boats for a very long time, so the first boat race is probably almost as old. I mean, all you need is two people boasting about how fast they can row or how quick their sailboat is, and then they'll compete to see who's right. So there's no real point in going all the way back to the beginning. Instead, I'll focus on the famous boat races that are still around today and where they got their start. First, yacht and dinghy racing. The difference between yachts and dinghies is size. Dinghies are small, just big enough to seat 1, 2, maybe 3 people, but after that, it gets crowded. A classic rowboat is technically a dinghy, as are most inflatable rafts, outboard motorboats, and the smallest of sailing craft. As such, dinghy racing is a pretty interesting blend of propulsion methods. Some are man-powered, some are propelled by internal combustion, and some are pushed by the wind. Depending on the race, you might have each method in a separate class, but some races combine classes and then impose handicaps. Longer boats, those with better propulsion, and those with more experienced crews will get a handicap and start out behind the slower boats. Theoretically, this makes sure that every boat will have an even chance of winning, but the formal handicaps don't always keep up with advances in technology. One particularly famous dinghy race is the Bermuda Fitted Dinghy Race, held in Bermuda every year by the Territories yacht clubs. Each boat has a regulation size and sail design, specifically the Bermuda rig. This is the one with the big triangular sail in the back and a smaller triangular sail in the front. It's become so popular over the years that it's practically iconic. The event originally began as a race between retired British naval officers on hired Bermuda sloops, but that eventually became too expensive, and so in 1888 they switched to dinghies with smaller amateur crews. And that's how the race has been throughout the past 140 years. Then there's yacht racing. Whether a boat qualifies as a yacht has to do with its size and its purpose. A yacht is a pleasure boat, which means it has no working purpose, and it needs to be bigger than a dinghy but smaller than a ship. Please note that both of those definitions can get kind of vague, and so the same is true about yachts. But each yacht race will have certain restrictions on what vessels can enter, and that's pretty much all you need. Formal sponsored yacht racing began in the 17th century during the Age of Sail, and while it began in the Netherlands, it quickly spread to all of the other big sailing nations. However, most of the modern races we still run today come out of the 19th century. This is the time when spectator sports really became popular in the Western world, and so sailing for sport became popular for the same reasons as baseball, soccer, and the Olympics. Today's yacht races are divided based on where they take place: offshore, inshore, which is even closer to the shoreline, open ocean, and global circumnavigation. For example, America's Cup is an inshore race that takes place at various locations around the globe, based on who the current champion is. It's called America's Cup because for 132 years, the New York Yacht Club was the defending champion, but it's passed through a few different hands at this point. Incidentally, since the America's Cup races started in 1851, this yacht race stands as the oldest international sporting trophy in the world. Then there's the yacht race simply titled the Ocean Race, although in the past it's been called the Whitbread Round the World Race and the Volvo Ocean Race. The Ocean Race started in 1973, and every 3 years, each participating nation will send a yacht with a professional crew on board to sail around the world, starting and ending in Europe. The yachts have both sails and diesel engines, and the crews get stopovers between the 9 legs of the race, but even so, it is one hell of an endurance match. The latest champion is China, but the Netherlands have the record of most wins with 3. Now, unlike yachts and dinghies, powerboats have to have a motor on board to qualify for a race. The first official powerboat race took place in 1903 in Great Britain, but the sport only really took off in the 1960s, as people began to develop boats specifically for speed and power. The races they ran at the time were long distance, and as such, a navigator was essential. It's hard to see where you are when you have to focus on fighting waves and keeping your speed up. However, today's powerboat races are shorter and tend to follow a circuit rather than moving point to point, so navigators aren't as necessary. Inshore powerboat racing uses a formula system similar to Grand Prix racing, and just like the Grand Prix, they feature powerboats built for speed that bear no resemblance whatsoever to a boat that you'd actually take for a cruise or fishing trip. Then there's jet sprint racing. Like I said in the video, jet boats don't use propellers so much as they use powerful pumps that draw water in from the front and fire it out the back. If you've ever seen a jet ski, those work the same way. Jet sprint racing began in New Zealand on braided rivers, shallow rivers that flow across a big riverbed mostly filled in with sand. Jet boats are just about the only way you can speed across them, since a normal boat's propeller would get ruined by the first sandbar. These days though, jet sprint racing is almost all done on artificial courses. It's also much bigger in New Zealand and Australia than it is anywhere else. Let's see, other types of boat races include hydroplane racing. Hydroplaning is bad when it happens to a car on the road, but on a boat it's good because it means that most of the vessel is up out of the water. That means less resistance and more speed. You might also hear about drag boats. That's just what you think it is. Trick out a boat with as much horsepower as you can make float, then race it in a straight line as hard as you can. Fastest time wins. Thanks for joining me again for today's movie and motor vehicle review, and I hope I'll see you next time as I finally get back to Vanishing Point.